What are you doing? Matt asked from the doorway of the kitchen when he saw Brian busy flipping fried eggs on a pan. How could he be asking him what he was doing when it was obvious that he was cooking? I'm playing PS? Grab the other pad, Brian said dryly without turning around to look at Matt. Matt chuckled at the dry humor as he walked into the kitchen and tried to pick a diced sausage from the plate, but Brian slapped his hands before he could get it. That's for my fiancée, Brian said, making Matt's jaw drop open, but Brian didn't bother to look at him as he walked over to the coffee maker to get a cup of coffee for Sonia. Fiancée? Who? Matt asked as he walked over to the door to see if Sonia was standing anywhere around the kitchen watching them. Before returning to meet Brian again, what fiancée? I believe you met her yesterday. Her name is Sonia Smith, and she is sleeping on my bed, Brian said distractedly as he tried to focus on the task at hand. Sonia? The same Sonia you kept calling a green-eyed witch last night? What is going on between you two? Don't worry. She can't hear us, so you can tell me the truth. Matt asked Brian in a very low tone as he followed him around the kitchen, while Brian arranged the breakfast on a tray. Tell you what? Brian asked innocently as he picked up the tray and started heading for the bedroom with Matt on his tail. After his deal with Sonia earlier, Sonia had gone as far as suggesting that they both put it down on paper so that each of them could have a copy of it for future purposes. They had both also agreed not to tell Matt, Lucy, or anyone else about their deal, as it all had to be as real as possible, since that was what Sonia wanted. Come on! Don't do that! I'm your best friend, and I deserve to know what is going on. I know something is up. So tell me, did something happen between you both? Don't tell me you screwed her already, you dog! Matt exclaimed suspiciously. I don't know what you're talking about. Get out of my way. I need to return to my fiancée, Brian said as he walked past Matt into the bedroom where Sonia was already awake and was busy on her laptop. Breakfast is ready, baby, Brian announced as he walked up to the bed and dropped the tray by the bedside, while Sonia gave him an approving smile. You seem pretty enthusiastic about this whole thing, Sonia observed as she pulled the tray to herself while Brian stood beside the bed, watching her as he waited for her to take her first bite. I always like to keep to my end of any bargain. You asked me to treat you as I would my fiancé, and that is exactly what I'm doing, Brian said, making Sonia smile as she took a forkful of egg into her mouth. She closed her eyes as she chewed. This tastes really nice, Sonia said in a tone that suggested that she was really enjoying the meal. Brian raised his chin proudly. I'm Brian Hank. There is nothing I cannot do, Brian said confidently. That's nice. I look forward to seeing everything you can do, Sonia said with a playful smile. Sure you will, but make sure you don't fall in love with me, Brian warned as he turned around to leave the room. Who says you won't be the one to fall in love with me? It is usually the person that asks the other not to fall in love that falls headfirst in love, Sonia said in a challenging tone, making Brian scoff as he turned around to look at her. We will see about that. By the way, you should hurry up with your breakfast and freshen up so we can go out. We can't spend the entire day indoors like we did yesterday, Brian said, making Sonia raise a brow. I'm not going anywhere with you today. I have to get busy with my writing. Let's go out some other time, Sonia suggested. I'm sorry, baby. Unfortunately, you will have to keep your work aside and give me your undivided attention. That is what my fiancé would do, Brian said, making Sonia roll her eyes. Your fiancée shouldn't focus on her job and career because she is engaged to you? I will let you know when I have time to spare, Sonia said as sipped from her coffee before returning her attention to her laptop. Brian watched as she typed on her laptop before telling her, You have an hour to get ready, darling. Don't keep me waiting. You want a fiancé? You will get one, Brian thought to himself as he turned around and walked out of the bedroom with a smirk on his face. The sides of Sonia's lips curved in a satisfied smile as she watched him leave. That is more like, she thought to herself as she picked up her jotter to write down what had just happened. Once Brian opened the bedroom door, he saw Matt standing very close to the door, like he had been eavesdropping on their conversation. What were you both talking about? Matt asked in a whisper. Were you eavesdropping on my conversation with my fiancé? Brian asked, glaring at Matt. Cut the crap and tell me what is going on, please. I feel I might die of curiosity if I don't know what is happening. Matt pleaded as he followed Brian into the kitchen to clean up the place. What happened over the night? Come on, talk to me, please. Matt pleaded impatiently. Nothing, you can leave now. I don't think you need to do anything anymore, Brian said, making Matt narrow his eyes. She must truly be a witch. She must have bewitched you while you were sleeping, Matt speculated after giving it some thought. Brian chuckled. Stop saying nonsense. Let's just say I thought about all you said yesterday, and I decided to handle things the Brian Hank way. Are you sure that is it? Hope you didn't poison her meal? Matt asked, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. Since when did poisoning people become the Brian Hank way? Brian hissed at Matt before walking to the sink to wash the dishes he had used to prepare Sonia's breakfast. It's not fair. I came all the way here to help you, but you are hiding the situation of things from me, Matt said grudgingly as he helped Brian rinse and dry the dishes. Thank you for your help. I think I can handle things on my own now. And it is all thanks to the pep talk you gave me yesterday, Brian said, turning to give Matt a toothy smile. You're sure that is all this is? You're not having any strange or funny feeling in your head? Like you love her all of a sudden? Matt asked in a low voice, wanting to be sure Sonia hadn't used a love potion on his friend. What sort of a question is that? Brian asked in amusement. I need to be sure she didn't use any spell or love potion on you, so just answer my questions, okay? If you happen to see I and Sonia drowning in your pool, who would you jump in to save first? Matt asked, cocking his head to one side as he waited for Brian to answer. Brian sighed, trying not to roll his eyes at Matt's dramatic question. You can't drown. You are a good swimmer. Anything can happen. Say I get a cardiac arrest while swimming and I start drowning, and Sonia is drowning too? Matt asked with a seriousness that made Brian roll his eyes now. Matt, I'm not under the influence of anything. I'm just trying to take charge of the situation. And right now you're not helping. Just trust me and allow me to handle things my own way, okay? Brian said, holding Matt's gaze. Matt looked at him suspiciously for a while before nodding his head. Okay, if you say so. But I'm not leaving yet. I just got here after all, Matt said, and Brian nodded. That is fine as long as you treat her as you would treat my fiancée, Brian said, giving Matt a pointed look. So I shouldn't try to seduce her? Matt asked with a slightly raised brow. Brian sighed. What part of treat her as you would treat my fiancée did you miss? Okay, fine. You asked for it, Matt said in a warning tone before walking out of the kitchen. Once he was outside the kitchen door, he turned around to peer inside the kitchen so he could spy on Brian, but Brian was still looking at the door with a slightly raised brow, so Matt flashed him a smile before walking away. Once he was sure Matt had left, Brian dried his hands and sat on one of the seats in the kitchen. Waking up that morning, he had made up his mind to consider Sonia as an actress and treat her like there was a camera watching them all the time. He had played the role of a doting fiancé in several movies before, so doing that now was going to be easy peasy. His 1-week break was going to end by Sunday, and from Monday he would be fully back to work, shooting movies and doing commercial shoots. He would be so busy that he would hardly have any time to spare, so he was just going to spend the weekend with her and give her a swell time. He took out his phone to look for fun places where he could take her to. Maybe they could see a movie, go to an amusement park, and then have dinner in a fancy restaurant before returning home. That seemed like a good plan, Brian thought with an impressed smile. Tom had a grin on his face as he tried to picture the blush which he knew would be on Lucy's face after reading his text. Although he knew he was being naughty, he couldn't pass the opportunity to tease her a little. After all, she had been the one who had brought up the whole talk about sex that morning. He got out of the car and headed for the building, deciding to stop by her office to return her key to her, and also see what she was doing, if she was paying attention to her work or whether she was distracted by his texts. His steps faltered when he saw Anita coming out of the building. What was she doing here again? Did she have another meeting with Harry? Tom wondered as he looked at her with a blank expression while she smiled as she approached him. Good morning, Tom. We meet again. she said with a cheerful smile. Of course, her smile was cheerful since she had nothing against him. She liked Tom as a person since he was a very nice guy and was good looking too. If only he wasn't such a nobody. Maybe she would have tried to take him seriously. Her mother and sisters would laugh at her endlessly if they ever heard that she had gotten involved with a blue-collar worker. She remembered the first time they had met about 3 months ago. She had rammed into his expensive-looking car from behind, and when she got out to apologize, she had met the gorgeous man behind the wheel, who looked at her with a calm smile and asked her not to worry. At that moment, she had thought she had finally met the man of her dreams and had asked for his number so she could give him a call later to know if his car was okay. She had tried to keep in touch after that day, and soon they had started exchanging texts. She had tried not to ask him what he did for a living because she hadn't wanted to sound like a gold digger. He looked decent and drove an expensive car, so that was enough to tell her that he was doing well for himself. That had been the reason she hadn't mentioned anything about her job either, since she had wanted to take things slowly between then. Unfortunately, it was only after they went on their first date and she confessed to him that she liked him and would like to go into a relationship with him if he was single that he had opened up to her that he was a handyman and the car he had been with on the day they met belonged to one of his wealthy clients. She had been very disappointed, but had tried to hide it by remaining polite. After that day, she had slowly withdrawn and had made up excuses to stand him up on every date until he had finally gotten fed up to the point of ending their relationship, much to her relief. Good morning. What brings you here today? Another meeting? Tom asked with a polite smile when Anita stopped in front of him. Not at all. I came to say hello to a friend, Anita said with a mischievous smile. There was no need to make things awkward between them by telling Tom that she was friends with his boss. She would leave that surprise for later when she finally gets the CEO to be her man. A friend? She had a friend here? Tom wondered, but decided it was not his business. I suppose you don't have much work to do at your office, Tom said, and Anita shrugged. You know how it is. Or maybe not. Anita said with an apologetic smile since she believed Tom wasn't very familiar with the structural organization of companies. Things aren't settled yet. New management, new rules, she explained. I see. Okay then, Tom said with a nod as he waited for her to leave, but she remained there staring at him. I hope you don't hate me? Anita asked with a curious smile. She knew that if Tom said anything bad about her to Lucy or the CEO, he could ruin her chances even before she got any. She needed to make sure they were cool, and he wouldn't say anything about her to anyone. Hate? That's a big word. Why would I hate you? Tom asked with a slightly raised brow. You know. What happened between us? Anita said with an awkward smile. I would rather we don't talk about the past. Can you not mention to anyone here that we were ever involved with each other? Let's just forget the past and act like strangers, okay? Tom asked, making the smile on Anita's face falter. Although she was glad that he was suggesting that they pretend not to know each other since that also served her purpose, but her pride was hurt that a mere driver and handyman like him was asking someone like her to pretend not to know him. Why? I don't think I need to give you any reason. Just don't tell anyone that we were involved with each other. Have a nice day, Tom said with a polite bow before walking away from her. Knowing the kind of person she was, he knew she wasn't going to go about telling anyone that they used to be in a relationship. When he first met her and started exchanging texts with her, he had thought for a moment that she might be just the lady he needed in his life. But he had snapped out of that dream almost immediately the moment he lied to her that he wasn't as wealthy as he suspected she had assumed, and her attitude changed towards him. Of course, he didn't have any problem with a lady wanting to marry a wealthy man. He only had a problem with the attitude she had given him simply because he wasn't as wealthy as she expected. If truly she liked him as she had claimed she did, then she would have treated him so differently. He was only going to reveal his identity to the public once he was settled with the right lady. That would stop people like Anita from coming around him and trying to act like they cared about him. He wished he could say he looked forward to seeing her reaction when she finds out the truth, but he really didn't care about her or her reaction. Anita straightened her back and raised her chin proudly as she watched Tom walk away. If he wanted her to pretend like nothing had happened between them, then that was okay by her. She wasn't going to feel bad about any of it. It wasn't her fault that he was poor after all, Anita thought as she walked away. Once Tom got out of the elevator, he pushed thoughts of Anita out of his mind as he dipped his hand into his pocket and slid the key ring down on one of his fingers. He smiled in anticipation of his encounter with Lucy as he lazily walked over to her office. He had spent some time mulling over what he wanted to say and do to her, and he was already dying to see her colored face. Lucy, who had pushed her phone far away from her and was just beginning to be focused on the documents in front of her, looked up when the office door was opened, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw Tom standing there with a smile on his face that touched his eyes. Seeing the smile on his face, his texts replayed in her head, and she felt her cheeks flush a bright red. It wasn't lunchtime yet, so why was he here? What did he want? As if he could read her mind, he raised the finger holding the key and said, "I came to return your key." "Oh, you have fixed the tap already?" Lucy asked, trying to focus on the current discussion and not think about the disturbing texts he had sent her. "Yes, ma'am," Tom said, but made no move to approach her table to drop the keys or sit down. He just leaned back on the door lazily, watching her like a predator. "So how much do I owe you?" Lucy asked as she picked up her bag, wanting to take out money for him. "Come on, I think we have passed the stage where you should pay me for my services. Don't you think so?" Tom asked, smiling at her again in a way that made her uncomfortable. Lucy wanted to tell him they haven't passed any stage, but she decided to settle for a polite response instead. "I think it's only polite that I pay you for your services. I insist," Lucy said, looking at him as though she was waiting for him to tell her how much his service cost. "What if what I want from you is not money?" Tom asked, making butterflies flutter in her belly. If he didn't want money, what else could he want from her apart from the other thing? She was too scared to ask the question out loud, since she knew him well enough to know he was likely going to ask for something silly. "Money is the only means of payment for such services," Lucy pointed out. "Then, don't pay me," Tom said with a shrug as he moved away from the wall and took his first step towards her, making her want to hide under her desk. How had their relationship changed so quickly in such a short duration?